Going from 0 to 10 million in property, what was the journey like, and is it still possible to get started in this day and age? Now, it is true that it is harder and harder to get on the property ladder. Like Auckland, where I'm living in right now, the house price here has tipped over $1.1 million. That's over $1 million to buy the most average house in the most average suburb. The $1 million house is probably so average and run down that you probably have to fork out another $50,000 to $100,000 to renovate before you can even move in properly, let alone the age-old dream of having enough money to try and invest to get enough passive income for you to retire early. But is this it? Are the houses just going to get more and more expensive, so there's just no room for us hard-working professionals to get started? And where do you start looking for good properties to get you started? And how do you invest safely and have enough for you to retire early if you want to? In this video, we're going to find out just that. Hi, my name is Hugo. I'm a doctor, ex-pharmacist, and a study performance coach based in New Zealand. Now, when I don't talk about study tips, I like to explore useful real-life skills that our education system has forgotten to teach us, and today it's going to be about property investing. Now, investing in general is a very powerful skill to have because it makes you rich. Not rich in terms of having a lot of money, but it is measured in terms of regaining your time and your freedom to do whatever and wherever you want in life. Like my wife has quit her job as an accountant a few years ago because it seems like the cool thing to do when you've worked hard enough on your side business to retire on this passive income. But soon she realized she truly loved accounting and she decided to go back to her day job, but this time working on her terms, working flexible hours, working from home whenever and wherever she likes. Now, everyone dreams of the notion of sitting on a beach in the Maldives having a butler bringing you cocktails all day, but after a week, you'll soon realize and ask yourself, what am I doing with my life? Now, I believe our true purpose of our existence is to continue to learn and grow each day and give back to those who are just a few steps behind us, so they will perpetuate the cycle in the future. And this is exactly what I will be doing in this video, my attempt to make this one of the most valuable 20-minute videos that you have ever watched. Now, before we start, we have to get clear on a few things. And first of all, I'm not a financial advisor, and this is certainly not financial advice specifically tailored for you. I'm simply sharing what works for us, and you're welcome to try these methods as you see fit. I'm also definitely not a property expert or guru. In the property investing world, we're still very small, tiny fish in this ocean, and we still have a lot to learn ourselves. Now, we simply have followed the steps of more successful people in the past and applied their principles. I also understand a lot of people have gone through or are still going through a tough time since COVID. Now, people have lost their jobs, lost their houses, let alone talking about building a $10 million property portfolio. So if you tend to be uncomfortable or offended seeing other people's success stories, please use this as a cue to stop watching this video. Now, I personally gain a lot of energy and motivation seeing real life results on how much people are earning on the internet and what my property mentors were actually making from each deal. I believe this video would benefit a lot of people, so if you haven't stopped by now, I take it as I have your consent now for us to begin. As you can see, I'm just recovering from a terrible viral infection, and you can see I coughed so hard that I managed to burst one of my blood vessels in my eye. Now, I hope that doesn't distract you too much, and let's dive right into this starting from the beginning. Now, our property journey began on my wife's side before I even met her, and neither of our families were rich. And we were told the traditional advice since we were young: to work hard at school, get a good job, save up, buy a house, pay off the mortgage in 30 years, and you'll have a good life once you pay off this mortgage, be debt-free, and retire at 65 years old. Now, my wife also always had a special love for properties since she was young. And when she was 12 years old, she walked miles around the neighborhood for an open house just to be able to see what other people's homes were like. Now, a real estate agent would just look at her and think that she had lost her way. And she knew she wanted to own her first property as soon as possible, so she decided to work and start saving since high school and working full-time equivalent even when she was a full-time student in university. At age 26, after working and saving for about 8 years, she managed to save up $100,000 to make her first purchase, a 2-bedroom apartment in the Auckland Central Business District, for $500,000. She happily moved in, found a flatmate as well, which helped pay the mortgage payment. A year later, she received a call from her real estate agent saying that her property has gone up a good $100,000 and asking if she would sell. Now, she knew that this means that she would have this extra $100,000 without waiting to save another 8 years until she buys a second property. So this is what she did, and this was when I met her. She was about to sell her house, which she held on to 1 year. At that time, I finished pharmacy school and was on my intern training year, earning about minimum wage wage, which was around $30,000 a year before tax. That means that I needed to work more than 3 years full-time to earn the same amount. Now this really opened my eyes because it was the first time actually seeing earning money differently. Not using our time to exchange for money as my parents told me, but using money itself to generate more money. That's when I was inspired and decided to save up everything I can, and also this is when I started my online businesses to have actually extra income source to contribute towards our property portfolio. So with the original $100,000 deposit released and also this $100,000 gain, now we have actually 2 lots of deposits and was able to get 2 $500,000 apartments. Now using the same tactic, living in one with a flatmate and rented the other whole apartment to cover out the mortgage payments. A year later, then each of these gained another $100,000 and we topped out our loan to squeeze out another deposit for our third apartment, which was at $250,000 only. But this is as far as luck and a lack of proper education gets us. We were stuck at this $1 million portfolio and wasn't able to grow it any further. Now you might be wondering, if you turned 1 into 2 with this increased house value as your new deposit, why can't you just turn 2 into 4? Now this comes to tip number 1 in property that we actually wish we knew when we first started, which is cash flow versus capital gain. So your growth of your property portfolio depends on this delicate balance between cash flow and capital gain. Ideally, you get houses that get you both, but realistically, you can only probably get one of the two. When I say capital gain, I mean how quickly your house value goes up. With these inner city apartment boom phase, the capital gain was high. A $500,000 apartment can easily go up $100,000 in a year. Now this is because compared to close to $800,000 average house price in Greater Auckland at that time, these apartments were relatively underpriced and was in demand. And back in the days when the banks allowed borrowing up to 80% of the investment property value, you needed a $100,000 deposit for a $500,000 house. Now $400,000 would be the mortgage. When this property price goes up to $600,000 the next year, you can ask the bank to look at your house again. Hey, now it's worth $600,000. I want to borrow 80% of this, which is $480,000 instead of the old $400,000. Now this is called topping up your loan. So now you have $80,000 that you can easily use and take out as a deposit for your next house. But this can't go on forever. Let's say that somehow your $1 million home magically went up to $2 million. And so you go to the bank and ask them for 80% of $2 million, which is $1.6 million. So the bank doesn't just look at how much your home is worth. They also look to see if you have the ability to service this loan and pay them back reliably. Now this is where serviceability comes in. And this was the main limiting factor that prevented us from going any further. Now the bank looks at you and go, hey, you don't actually earn that much, so I can actually lend you more because I think you won't be able to afford the mortgage if something happens. Now, even when our property was having capital gains each year, we weren't able to reuse it to buy our next house. Now of our 10-year property journey, we were stuck at a portfolio of $1 million for the first 5 years. And this is where we got completely stuck and decided to reach out for help. At that point, I was trying my best to catch up with all the financial education gap I had between me and my partner, reading all the books about money, property that I could actually get my hands onto. I remember just finishing reading Rich Dad Poor Dad and I couldn't sleep for 3 days, with a mind overwhelmed with ideas and completely new perspective of how this financial world works. Now surely, through the power of Facebook ads, I saw a link to this free 2-hour seminar, which was recommended by the author of Rich Dad Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki himself. And we attended this and of course got upsold into a 3-day workshop for $1,500. Now this was the most I ever learned about property and networked with so many people who have been doing this for many years. We knew we needed more help, so we decided to take a leap of faith and invested $40,000 to learn from a proper mentor who could give us personalized advice to take our property game to the next level. Now yes, that was the same cost as my pharmacy or medicine degree, but it was definitely well worth it. Now with proper guidance from our mentor, we were able to get over this $1 million glass ceiling because of the problems with serviceability. We ended up selling one of these apartments for $600,000. We then ventured through to this small little town 5 hours away from us called Gisborne, where we have never ever been to. I remember this was really scary and exciting at the same time because this was the week following our wedding, where we were happily looking at houses to invest during our honeymoon. And I think we actually had a lot of fun during this honeymoon. Now during our mentorship, we were taught to do the fundamental research right. How to analyze where there is enough rental demand, whether that house is a good deal to invest into. They were all just numbers and it made sense to me because I'm a very analytical person who loves numbers that make sense. And we were also introduced to a team of property managers, builders, electricians, painters that was actually used and trusted by our mentors, because this was absolute gold. This town that we've never even been to, we were about to put our life savings in this, and we would never have ever invested there because it would have been totally impossible to manage a property 5 hours drive away from you. Now back in 2017, the houses in Gisborne were very affordable. The Auckland average house price was $850,000, whereas it was about $200,000 in Gisborne. I'll take this 2-bedroom brick and tile home, for example, in Gisborne for $150,000. Now, it was definitely a bit run down to begin with, but as you can see with simple renovations, you can see it makes a huge difference and much better for our tenants to live in. A change of the floorboards, revamping the kitchen, changing the carpets, and also repainting the walls. We also made sure the place was well insulated with good air conditioning, so they would love to call this place home and stay in for longer. We always like to do it up to a standard that we ourselves would actually live in it and call it our own home. So from the $600,000 we got from selling one of these Auckland apartments, we bought 4 houses like these in Gisborne within 1 month, costing about $150,000 each. Now, this is a true game changer for our investing journey. Now, from the $600,000 we were getting $600 weekly rent in Auckland, this only barely covers all the property management fees and maintenance expenses, etc. But when we actually split this up into 4 $150,000 house in Gisborne, each renting $300, we're actually getting $1,200 weekly rent instead of $600 in Auckland. Now, each of these small houses we bought ended up putting money into our pockets rather than us having to pay from our paychecks to maintain this house. Now, the banks absolutely love this because all of this extra rent each week counts towards your ability to serve bigger loans, so you can continue topping up your loan as your property value goes up. Now, at this point, if you were like me when I first started, I was highly skeptical of this model. If you are taking on bigger and bigger loans, isn't this risk growing every single day? What if the house prices fall? Won't you lose a lot of money? Now, this was definitely on my mind when I first began, so as factual and logical as I am, I need to find out more data and knowledge to mitigate this safely. Now, like when you invest in stocks, the stock price can fall a lot, but as long as you don't sell and hold on to it, you haven't really lost anything. Now, this is the same for properties. The house prices can fall, just like in the global financial crisis in 2008. Nearly 10% fall here in New Zealand. But as long as you didn't buy in 2007 and sell in 2008, you actually haven't lost anything at all. Now, a real catastrophic risk is when you can't pay the mortgage. Now, this is where the banks can take everything from you and you go broke. This is why having the knowledge to research to the right area where there is good demand is very important. Now, you've always heard location, 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 and that's absolutely right. Like in Gisborne, anytime you search for properties for rent, there's only somewhere around 5 properties at any time for the whole town. And of all of our properties that with dozens and dozens of rooms, we, touch wood, still never have any vacancies for the past 5 years. We had so many times where we bought a property and had 20 rental applications before we even settled on the property. Now, some tenants even decided to increase their rent so they would actually get us to pick them as our tenants. So this is the power of researching in the right area. So if this game is played right, each property we buy makes us financially stronger and a surplus to cover for other properties if they have vacancies, because we provide a warm and safe home to our tenants, and in return they pay rent which covers all the expenses and an extra to act as reserve for future maintenance or as contingency should anything happen to the house. Now remember, all of this is controllable. You know how much the place costs, you know how much rent you'll receive, and you know how much it would cost to maintain the house. Now this residual number should be positive and you should be putting money into your pocket and you'll be doing it right. Now, at the most extreme cases with our current numbers, we know that we only needed to rent out half of our houses to break even to sit tight. And even if all the houses aren't rented out for some reason, we made sure our active incomes will act as a buffer to ride out any tough times in store for us in the future. And if anything should happen to one of us, we made sure we bought enough life insurance so we can simply pay down the loan and we'll be financially sound to be able to take care of our future family or kids when we get one. One special thing that happens to property and we cannot control, and we do not include this into the calculations when buying, is the appreciation of the property, or how much this property goes up each year. Now there are a few indicators you can look out for, but this is going into speculation or gambling territory. But in turn, the more properties you're able to hold on to using the safe method we talked about, the more luck you've generated for yourself. Now, like Gisborne was going through a boom phase in 2017 when we just bought 4. The median house price around then was $200,000. Now in 2021, it's $690,000. Now that's at 69% increase each year. I've also completed my second degree in 2018, so apart from my online businesses, my regular income actually added to more serviceability. So the house prices kept increasing, so we were able to actually take out all of this capital gain and actually buy 4 more the following year in Gisborne. And each of these properties actually put money into our pocket, so we were able to continue the cycle. We were then able to continue to repeat the strategy year after year in other cities as well, including overseas in the UK, to diversify as well as continue to grow our portfolio. Now with a strong cash flow coming in, in. We're now tipped to the other end of the balance, where there was actually a lot of money coming in, but all of these relatively small, low value properties can only increase by so much. Now this $150,000 property can increase by 100%, but it will still be just $150,000. But on average, not during a boom phase, it can take up to 7 years for any property to double its value. So it will take a long time until we reach a multi-million portfolio if you passively wait for this low value house to increase in price. Now this is where we moved on to our next exponential growth phase, which is our development projects. Now higher risk and higher returns. Now people ask, if there is so much return in the developments, why didn't you do this right off the bat? Now the answer depends on your risk tolerance and knowledge. Now I'm trained as a pharmacist and a doctor, so we were actually taught to be very safe in managing our patients. Our partner was also an accountant, so she was trained to be professionally conservative. But at this point, with 2 active incomes from our day jobs, no kids, not much spending, plus my side businesses, plus all the income coming from all our existing properties, we feel like we have a big enough cushion to ride out any catastrophic mistakes we could make as beginner developers. Now what tipped us over to get into these development projects at this point was that people was actually starting to notice and hear of our successes and wishes to chip in so that they could actually use our expertise in property so they can make money themselves. Now we actually had a bunch of money offered from angel investors, and we thought this was the perfect time to start our development journey. Now we had actually enough in our portfolio to pay them back should anything happen to their money. Now this is our absolute priority, to operate at this highly conservative way when it comes to dealing with other people's money. Now this video is getting a bit long, so I'll get into the specific numbers in a separate video if you are interested. Now essentially, we bought the land and owned it ourselves for $1 million. Now there are actually 2 existing houses on top of it, so which can be rented out day 1 to lower our risk further and give us cash flow from day 1. And we kept our tenants in mind, so we wanted to keep the construction disruption to a minimum, and we found a builder that can actually build off-site. So the house was completed, then transported to the site, so our tenants lived in peace and quiet for most of the construction period. So essentially, we put in $1 million to buy the land, then we used our angel investors money, which was $1 million for construction of 3 houses, then we generated $3 million from this deal. And we then paid our angel investor back plus the agreed interest, and we got to keep this $1 million net profit. Now it sounds very easy on paper, but we definitely had a lot of roadblocks and lessons we learned along the way, and I'll get into this in another video. Now along with our existing buying and renting, or what we call buy and hold strategy, we then continue these projects every single year, moving on to bigger deals, similar process but with bigger numbers. And this year when we were completing our accounts, we managed to hit $10 million, which is beyond what we would actually imagine if you were asking me just a few years ago. And there are so many more concepts and examples I wish to show you, but this video is getting a bit too long, and I would love to hear what you would learn more about it so I can actually tailor this to our next video. And if you have enjoyed this video, click the subscribe button, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.